Mr. Checketts, I appreciate the time. I
Hey.
like the backdrop. Yeah. Everything looks good there. How's the summer been progressing for you?
It's been quite the roller coaster whirlwind. We were on vacation 2 weeks ago in Sun Valley, Idaho, so not far from where you are. My grandparents got married in Utah and then did a honeymoon in Sun Valley before it was, Sun Valley 70 years ago. Mm-hmm. And every summer they've taken the family up for a couple of days. So we got back, and the day we got back, we moved houses. Wow. And then the next day we had a hurricane roll through and take down all these trees, hit power lines, and went 5 days with, no cell service, no power, no water. So, kind of worked our way through that. And now life's getting a little bit back to normal, trying to think about the kids getting back to school. But, it's been a crazy summer for sure.
Yeah. Adding on everything else. I mean, how's the feeling back there with everyone kind of going back to school? Is it going to be online, or is it going to be in person? Have they kind of hashed that out yet?
Yeah. They just announced yesterday it's going to be a hybrid model. So, okay. Depending on your last name, you'll go to school Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday. Nobody's going to school on Friday. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the days will be a learn from home for the first month, and then they'll kind of reassess depending on what the case count's like. But the kids have to wear masks, and I think the teachers are, getting used to the curriculum and ready for it. But the pandemic was taken very, very seriously in our area. Our county and area was in the first month, we were consistently ranked in the top 10 in terms of areas hit, but the case count's gone down dramatically here. So we're starting to come back to some level of normalcy.
Right. It's kind of the new normal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So for you, I mean, you've kind of had such an interesting career, going through, spending time, Cisco, the NFL, Legends, FanVision, kind of moving through, and then you settle upon and have this amazing startup so far called Rhone. And so the main question, what's the drive for you? What's kind of driven you in your career so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think like you, I grew up in the Northeast, and I don't know if you had this experience as well, but with all the kids I went to school with, there was kind of this belief that you were gonna go work in finance, or work in consulting, or there's like kind of these very narrow fields. Mm-hmm. But it just didn't really appeal to me to go down that traditional path, and I went pretty far down it. I mean, I went to school. I majored in finance. I was a good boy. I took a internship with a management consulting firm. I took an internship with a private equity firm. I was kind of like going down that road, and I realized I just hated it. I was like, this is not what I want to do. And the idea of just being stuck behind a desk, kind of like just trying to like either only use Excel or only use PowerPoint, just sounded like the worst thing in the world to me. And not to mention everybody I spoke to who was kind of like 5 years ahead of me hated their job. So it seemed to me like there was an opportunity to go and be a bit more entrepreneurial. And I always was growing up. I was always coming up with ideas, and my parents like to say that I was always trying to hawk things and sell them. Me and my brothers, when we went to our first Yankee game, we ended up getting a ball from Don Mattingly, and me and my brother tried to sell it to the guy next to us. Almost got the transaction done before my dad told us that was highly inappropriate. And when I was younger, we were selling lemonade, on like every other kid, but we lived near a golf course, so we always used to go and dive into the lake and pull the golf ball out, and we were chased by the Rangers, and we once ended up selling lemonade at what we thought was a wedding party. Not that would be appropriate either at the end of our street, but it ended up being this woman's husband's wake, and so we got in a lot of trouble for that. I mean, I was always an entrepreneur. I didn't know that's what that was called, but
Yeah.
as I got into college and I started to do a lot of self-reflection, I thought I like building things and I like creating things that have some level of value, and that gives me the level of flexibility to somewhat control my own destiny and schedule. And I'm okay with failure. I think I've always been a little bit that way. I don't get that embarrassed if something goes wrong or if I fall. It's failure is part of life, and I believe in order to learn, you have to fail. Um, so that's kind of what started me down, if you can call it a career, a very, very alternative career path to the one that I had previously been on.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean that failure. I feel like that's extremely difficult for a lot of people to kind of be able to deal with that, right? I mean, it happens to everybody, and you kind of just have to be able to continue to move forward and not let it affect you, especially when you're going into a startup or entrepreneurial. I mean, skiing wise, competitive. I mean, definitely not every day is your day. You make a lot of mistakes, and so yeah. I mean, I feel like that's definitely a difficult process to kind of go through.
Well, and when you think about it, it's, you just don't progress without failing.
Hmm.
If you understand that failure is one of the steps of progress, then you just have to, you almost have to look forward to it and find ways to embrace it as part of the journey. And for me, I can look at just about everything in my life that has been of use, or that I derive a lot of satisfaction from.
Hmm.
Failure's been a part of it.
Yeah.
And it obviously there's different degrees of failure, but I like, referencing the in the arena. It's Teddy Roosevelt's speech, "Man in the Arena," is one of my all-time favorites, and he talks about this. He talks about, you never want to be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat because they simply didn't try. And I'd rather try and dare greatly, as he says,
Right.
and come up short
Yeah.
than look around and realize I never tried at all. So it's always been kind of part of my DNA. It was the part of the way I was raised. My dad was certainly an entrepreneur in many respects, and I was lucky and fortunate to learn much from him.
Right. Now, kind of speaking to that, what is that like when you're going through and you're trying to juggle multiple things at one time? When you're kind of going into that startup avenue, Rhone's kind of just getting off the ground, and then you got a family to provide for. There's a lot of outside pressure, right? I mean, and that especially if you have a fear of failure, I mean, it has to be extremely, extremely difficult. I mean, for you, it's a little bit easier, right? Because you're not afraid, like, hey, this might not work out, but I'm still going to give as much effort as possible, and we'll see where it goes.
Well, I mean, and while I say I'm less afraid of failure, what I would say is that adding kids into the mix and family in the mix and a mortgage in the mix, like that definitely ups the pressure. And
Absolutely.
it's hard. Like, I think we've been at this now for 6.5 years, and if you add in kind of the part of building up to launch, it's been longer than that. But you know, it's not every day, but it's often that I will hear from somebody who's like, well, you just, overnight success,
Hmm.
so lucky. And, there were so many nights and early mornings, and there still are, where it was a lot of grinding and planning and, making sure, even though, failure is going to be part of the journey, you certainly aren't seeking it or trying to achieve that failure. And so, yeah, it's been hard. And I think what I've learned, and I think as I've progressed, it's been easier to do it, but I've learned to say no to a lot more things in my life. I think the hardest thing for me in just growing up is learning to narrow my focus and to say no to more things and to say yes to only a few things, higher priority items.
Right. And those have probably changed a lot, I would imagine, since earlier on. Those kind of higher priorities are a little different than what they used to be.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I think the biggest change is that I've set them, like I put them in writing. This is what I care about. This is what matters to me. Because I think the hardest thing in spending time, and time is the most valuable resource that we have, is that it's so easy to say yes to so many things, and then you end up, if you actually evaluate what you're spending time on and then match it up with your list of priorities, for the vast majority of people, myself included, those, they don't often line up perfectly. And if you say, all right, well, my most important thing is my family. Well, how much time am I realistically spending with them? Well, during COVID, it's been a lot.
Yeah.
But before that, I would say that there's just opportunity to improve and to make sure that my priorities and my time spent were in sync. And so, yeah, I think the biggest change is putting the stakes in the ground and saying, this is what matters to me. This is what I'm going to focus on.
Now, putting those stakes in the ground, you write that, is that on paper or is that on a phone?
It's on paper.
You see, there's
it's on
something
both.
different about that, I feel like, right? I mean, one of the last episodes was chatting just about how there is something different about pen to paper rather than putting it on your iPhone or something like that. Just like, oh yeah, I got to do this as a list. When you actually write that down and it kind of makes it, it just feels like it's more concrete, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly read behavioral research papers that would suggest that, there is something actually different. It's not just placebo. It's not just our perceived value of taking pen to paper, that there is something about moving your hand in those letters that is helping connect that to your mindset, and versus, just kind of typing it out. But whether you type it and print it, I think the most important thing, people talk about goal setting all the time and how important it is, and goal setting is important. But I would say goal setting is like 10% of the job, and it's really goal monitoring that is like the real thing. And that's where, I don't know about you, but if I look at times where I've been able to achieve my goals, it's been because I've stayed on top of them and I monitor them, and I quickly, I measure myself. It's easy to say and even write down, I'm going to achieve X by Y, and you can make them SMART goals. But if you don't ever go back and look and evaluate and have a system and a process for measurement and monitoring, it doesn't matter how smart your goals are, or if you set them, it'll be like anything else. So,
yeah,
I've learned the importance of just having a system and a process for checking in with myself and self-reflection to keep myself accountable.
So what kind of system and process have you kind of created to goal monitor for yourself?
Well, so it's fairly long and lengthy, but it's something I spent a lot of time on. And I wrote an article kind of outlining everything on Rhone's blog, The Pursuit, including the templates that I use. But essentially, what I do is I focus on weekly goal setting, because I think that's the most important time frame for goals. People often overestimate what they can accomplish in a day, but underestimate what they can accomplish in longer periods of time. So I do have kind of 5-year and 10-year goal map, but then I really try and bring that down to the quarterly and weekly level. And I print out a new version of this template every single week, and I will go and I will write it down. These are my 3 to 5 core objectives that I'm going to accomplish this week. And then on the other side, I've listed out, here's the things that I want to do either every other day or every day, and I will track it. So in the beginning of the day and the end of the day, I just have a pen right underneath, and I will go and I will mark how I'm doing, whether it's, if I'm trying to read books, or, for me, spending some time spiritually is important for me, and connecting with that. So I monitor and I measure that. And then once a quarter, I have it blocked out on my schedule for 2 hours. And there's a list of things that I'll go through. And really, that's an opportunity to make sure that I'm focusing my time on kind of the most important priorities, and that is set in stone. The priorities are set in
Priorities are
stone,
set, yeah.
and my kind of life's mission and objectives, that I don't touch anymore. That I've set that,
Okay.
and I just try and make sure that what I'm doing is it's a check-in process. So so those are kinds of the things that I spend time on.
Right. So that kind of helps you take care of the day-to-day or week-to-week, some of those vital priorities.
Yeah.
Now, what
It's
happens?
easy to lose track.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's definitely going to go check out. Now, for some of those people, like, are there any habits you would say that are kind of unique to you that are able to help you tackle those weekly things, other than just having that template there? Is there, is it you have a good attitude, or are you overly critical? I mean, I've had a bunch of different I've had the hate to lose people on. I've had the love to win. There's all different competitive drives, and so I'm just kind of curious for you. What would you say it is?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely competitive, just my nature, and it's actually something I've learned to better control. When I was younger, it was definitely the hate to lose mentality. But I think what I've learned is I think the most important thing for me is I believe in personal growth. And I find that I'm at my happiest, best, I'm my best father, the best version of myself as a father, as a husband, as a leader of a business, when I am taking time and I feel like I'm growing and progressing. I think most people are like that. And so part of our company culture at Rhone is we try and make space and encouragement for people to progress personally. Mm-hmm. And for some, that is really important to be measured in athletic pursuits. So whether it's getting a PR, a certain, workout level, or, a marathon or whatever it is. And for others, that's, more hobby driven, or, visiting certain sites. But whatever it is, it's kind of connecting with that inner tissue and saying, I feel like I'm making steps towards that. And I'm learning and I'm growing and progressing. And it's, I compare it to flying on an airplane, and they give that advice of, okay, if the air pressure in the cabin goes down, the mask will fall. And if the mask fall, put a mask on yourself before you put it on the child sitting next to you. And I don't know about you, but every time I hear that, I'm like, that is the craziest thing ever. If these masks fall, there's no way I'm putting it on myself first, ever. Like, yeah. I can't imagine doing that. And yet the truth is, you're not doing any child any favor by losing consciousness because you decided not to, put a mask on yourself. And so you really do have to think about how I'm at the best version of myself when I'm deciding to allocate an appropriate amount of time for self-care.
I mean, self-care has been such a big growth as well. I mean, I feel like for a lot of people, it's still difficult to be able to worry about self-growth, right? I feel like it's kind of more the younger generations and stuff like that, because I know my grandparents and everything else, the last thing that they're concerned about is themselves. They are always worried about everyone else, and I think it's very difficult. And I feel like people think of it as a super selfish thing, but I definitely don't. I mean, you kind of need that to be able to grow and be able to thrive in new experiences and really tap into potential that you didn't even know that you potentially had, unless you go down an avenue or you take the time to read that book. You get that morning run in, and the birds spark an idea
right.
for you, or you have that morning sunrise that you see, and it's like, hey, maybe I should try this, or
Yeah, I mean, it's so tricky because there's a balance. You could certainly spend all of your day focusing on yourself, and when does that cross over into self-indulgence versus self-love and self-care?
Sure.
And for everybody, that's a little bit different, because I really admire the prior generations and their willingness to, just kind of like grit it out.
Yeah.
But I think that there's just something to be said about making sure that you are taking care of yourself and you're getting yourself to a good state. There was an interesting report that came out that I read recently about working mothers. And this is something I've always wondered about, because, working mothers always face criticism about putting their children second and putting their careers first.
Mm-hmm.
And what the research basically said, and I didn't dive into the details of who sponsored it, so I don't know of the quality, but I thought the takeaway was interesting. And what they said is that quality of interaction matters much more than quantity of interaction. In other words, there was no discernible difference in terms of the outcome of children between working mothers and non-working mothers when the emphasis was on quality of interaction. And what I take from that is that, when we show up for each other, and, because we've taken care of ourselves, we can really impact each other in such a positive way. Just getting on this call and having positive energy between the two of us, we can, both of us can leave this call lifted and ready to go and tackle our next endeavor. But
Absolutely.
if I didn't get enough sleep last night and I'm not taking care of the way I fuel my body or hydrate or taking care of the way I exercise, I might show up to this conversation a little bit differently. And that can impact the energy that you then have to a degree, or it certainly could impact my wife or my kids or my coworkers. And so there is something to be said that one of the most important things you can do for the people that you love is to take care of yourself, get yourself into an important, healthy state so that you can, be your best self around them and encourage them to be their best self.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, one of the things kind of last winter that I really got into, went down the rabbit hole on was sleep. And
oh yeah,
I don't know if you've read Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, but
I haven't. No,
I would highly recommend it. It absolutely changed my perspective and how much I really needed to value sleep and how important it was. Because I've always been one of those people that like, okay, I can run on 4 hours. Like I still feel fine and still feel like I function really well. And after reading that book, it absolutely changed my perspective, not only on that, but also on alcohol consumption, caffeine consumption, and all kinds of different. So, I mean, it's made it so much more of a priority in my life than it was before. And I was like, damn, I wish I had done this when I was competing. I wish this book was out back when I was a competitive, I mean, definitely. But I guess it's good to have it, better late than never.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you say that. I recently invested in a company called Athletic Brewing, and they are trying to make non-alcoholic beer to have the same flavor profile of kind of these IPAs. And I'm not an alcohol drinker myself, but the founder is this really great guy who was doing triathlons, and his wife was like this incredible vegan cook, and they lived unbelievably healthy lifestyles. And when he looked at it, the only thing in his life that he could like take to the next level was reducing his alcohol consumption. So he had a dry January, and he's like, I always feel so good at the end of January. Why do I go back to this? So then he ended up staying sober, and not for addiction reasons, but just for health reasons. And then he realized he started challenging his friends and his brother, and they all reduced their alcohol consumption so dramatically, and they started saying, wow, I feel so much better, mental health, all this stuff. And so he ended up launching this company, Athletic, and he's tracked all of these interesting metrics on how alcohol impacts the body, and we don't think about it oftentimes, definitely. And it's so easy to justify. But you're right. Like, would you give up whatever that is worth, the caffeine or whatever, if it meant showing up better for yourself or being able to have higher quality of sleep? I always prized myself. And we grew up, raised by the generation of I wake up at 4:30 in the morning, and it used to be a badge of honor to burn the candle on both ends. And
for sure,
it's again, there's a line, but sleep matters, and it's like research driven, proven, it matters.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's one of the, when speaking of the alcohol, I mean, it's just the difference when I've gone through periods of not drinking and stuff like that, the inflammation, I feel like, there's such a big difference there. And there was actually an article I was reading a few days ago that was on the differences between alcohol consumption now compared to like the 40s and 50s. Like if you had between 3 drinks, you were considered like a moderate to heavy drinker. And like today it's like 7 or 8 would be considered,
7, yeah.
you know, it's like the number's more than doubled. It's like, huh, okay. Times
Well,
have
the other
certainly
interesting
changed.
thing that this guy Bill told me is he said in Europe, 15% of all beer is non-alcoholic. In the US, you want to know what that number is?
Yeah.
It's less than 1%. It's like 0.5%. So, nobody's drinking these traditional non-alcoholic beers probably because they don't taste as good, or the flavor profile is not right. But he says there's a huge opportunity to increase it because alcohol consumption has gone down consistently over the last few years. The market for alcohol has stayed relatively the same, but it's because people have been consuming less and switching into more expensive drinks, kind of more of these seasonal profiles and higher end,
more of the microbrews and stuff like
drinks.
that.
But I thought it was interesting as a consumer and as an investor in consumer businesses. I just found it really fascinating.
Yeah, no, and I feel like the science on it we get more and more information on it each and every day. So it's super interesting to see kind of where that field's going to go. Now for Rhone, I mean, as you go in and for a startup, I mean, apparel is one of the most difficult businesses to get into. And so where does that idea like spawn? Like, okay, I'm gonna jump into the clothing market.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? I mean, the simple answer is, I had left kind of the startup world, and I had gone back into corporate America. I was working at the NFL at the time. I had started this company. We sold it to a group, and I was burned out from being an entrepreneur. 3.5 years of my life, like as 16-hour days every day, just like grinding.
Yeah.
And my friends had 401ks and great health plans, and I didn't know what that was like. And at this event, I ended up, the business that I had started was a mobile software business in the sports and entertainment space. And I ended up meeting this executive at the NFL, and I was telling him about what I did. He said, I think you should come and interview at the league. And I ended up getting an offer to go run their sponsorship strategy group. And, it was tricky for me because all my friends were like, oh, wow, you work at the NFL. This is the coolest job ever. But for me, it was such a change from being an entrepreneur that I was unhappy, and I was grappling with the fact that I was unhappy, and yet I was supposed to have this amazing job, and I now had the 401k and I had the great health insurance, and my wife didn't have to worry about whether or not my company was going to go bankrupt at any minute. But I was unhappy, and so I basically wrote down in a journal that I was going to go build another company, and I was going to keep myself open to opportunities. And I started to see them everywhere. And one of the places that came to light was in the apparel space, because for a Christmas, my mom gave all of the guys in the family a pair of Lululemon sweatpants. And this was back in 2012, or maybe 2011. And so their men's business wasn't very big yet. And I had heard of the brand, but didn't really know it. And my brother-in-law was like, Nate, we cannot wear these pants. Look at the logo. Look at the packaging. Like, this is a women's yoga brand. And I was like, I'm not turning away a pair of free sweatpants. Like, I'm definitely wearing these.
Yeah.
And, but then when I was back at the NFL, I ended up, Budweiser sent a box of Lululemon gear for some of the women in the office. They started going through it. I was like, oh, I was given some Lululemon sweatpants, and the guy next to me is like, oh, that's cool. Do you buy your underwear at Victoria's Secret? And I was like, what is with you? Like, why does this matter so much? Why is it such a big deal that they mostly sell women's clothes, and they have a men's collection? But I started mapping it out, and what I realized is that the bulk of men's kind of active clothing was sold by all of the huge box brands that we had grown up with, the Nike, Under Armour, Reebok, Adidas.
Yeah.
And their whole business model, 85% was through traditional wholesale distribution, meaning they're selling to a store like a Dick's Sporting Goods, and then that store is selling to the end customer.
Mm-hmm.
And they all competed around very similar price points, and they competed around similar gender mix. So, sold a little bit more to men than they did to women. But then you had all of these more direct brands that were popping up that were selling clothes at a premium to Nike and Under Armour and Reebok and Adidas. But they were selling, directly to the customer, and they were charging more. So just economically, it didn't make sense to me. But what I learned is it means they're spending more money on their product. Their gross margins aren't better than Nike. Right. And it's not that Nike is just that much bigger. They're spending more money on the quality of what they're making. And that made a lot of sense to me, especially as I started looking at the quality of the product of some of these women's brands. But the problem is all of the innovation was on the women's side. So, even Lululemon that had a decent sized men's business, only, now I think it's like 20+% of their business is men's, but at the time it was 12%. And so then I looked on the men's side and said, okay, well, what are the really great men's active brands that are doing this? And there was no one. I couldn't find a single brand that was kind of 80+% focused on the men's market, selling at a premium and really investing so much into the quality of the fabrics that they were using. And so then I started to say, there's clearly an opportunity here. And my brother-in-law, my younger brother, Ben, who's our creative director, and we started working on this idea and started to, kind of outline, all right, what really is the opportunity? And it's such a big space. There's so many people buying so many clothes. And we also felt like this digitally native experience of brands that were starting online and selling directly to the customer was going to be a big thing. And, health and wellness was a big thing. And so there was enough of an opportunity to say, as crazy as it sounds, to say, well, let's go make and sell clothing. Right. And, it's certainly resonated, and we've had a lot of success with it.
Yeah. I mean, especially being able to distribute and having such big distribution online. I mean, when I was looking through it, so it's like 65% or more of your distribution goes through online. I mean, especially having that vision back then to, hey, let's get it directly to the consumer. And I mean, obviously nobody could have seen what's happened with COVID and everything else, but I mean, that really has to help in the aspect that you can just go directly online. All right, if it doesn't work, ship it back. We'll get you what you need. It has a huge advantage.
Yeah, categorically. I mean, we're feeling very lucky right now because I'm glad we didn't decide to sell luggages, or whatever. But it's as relevant. We did, we did have some insight into the fact that men's daily uniforms were changing, right? There was kind of this casualization happening in America. And, guys, we're simple creatures. Like, I don't need 18 different T-shirts for ultimately the same thing. And so, if you go back 10 years, guys might have organized their closet with, this is what I can wear to work. This is what I can wear to the gym. This is what I can wear to go out with my friends. This is what I can wear for more formal settings. Pretty much all of that has collapsed into a single category, excluding like formal occasions. Almost all of that is collapsed into a single category of, this is just what I want to wear in life. And, most importantly, I want it to be comfortable, and I want it to perform, and, and I want it to fit really, really great. And the hard reality is if you're a massive company and you're selling 5 sizes, small, medium, large, extra large, double extra large, those 5 sizes have to fit 95% of people. Whereas we said, we don't have to fit everyone. We're gonna go and we're gonna build a brand that is tailored to people who are really active and care about the way the clothing drapes and sits on them. And we're gonna make it out of the best available fabric that you can buy. And then we'll set the cost based on how much the product actually costs to make, not just artificially set a price of what the consumer is willing to pay. And that's why I'd put our product side by side against anyone. I think we make the best t-shirts on the market. I think we make the best athletic shorts. I think our sweatpants and our commuter wear, it really is. And, and there are times like our commuter shirt, which is $118, made out of this luxury Italian fabric. The only other company in the world to use it sells theirs for 500 euros. So like $600. But so when there are times to give an opportunity for the customer to have savings, we do that. But for the most part, it's more expensive because it's more expensive to make.
Yeah.
And, but we're just never going to sacrifice on quality.
So what was that? I mean, is that a pretty fun process to be able to go through and find the luxury, what quality is the best, and kind of go through that R&D? Is that a pretty fun process to be like, okay, no, I don't really like this material. This feels good. I like this. I mean, what's that like?
Yeah, that is, I mean, I do love that part of the process because, a lot of the questions that you might ask yourself as a consumer, like, why did they put the pocket here? Or why is this made this way? If I were doing it, I would try this. Like, you get to have those conversations and with the factories and the designers and say like, well, why don't we do it this way? Like, for me, one simple example of this is when we first started making socks, I generally wear ankle socks. Like, I don't like, taller socks than that. Yeah. I said, my only problem with ankle socks is many ankle socks will like slip into my shoe and it drives me crazy. Is there a way to add in a rubberized seal on the back to kind of,
keep it up,
prevent it from slipping down? And I'd never seen that anywhere. And the design firm that we started with and we were initially working with, they were like, that's a good idea. Let's see what we can do. And so I remember I got 8 different test socks with different types of material on the back and different seals, and some that wrapped all the way around and some that were pads in the back. And that's how we ended up creating our first sock. And it uses 6 different types of mesh to kind of come and really wrap the foot and hold it in place and make sure that it doesn't slip down. But we obsess over those kinds of little details, because it's not just, hey, go make this product and make sure that it meets this margin target. It's, if we can't make the best product in this category, then let's not even enter this category. I don't want to do it. Right. Because if I want to, imagine how that would feel if you made something and you're like, well, I actually would rather wear this other brand because it's better stuff. Right. I love it when we see athletes all the time, professional athletes who have contracts with, some of the biggest names in the category, and they're paying full price to buy our stuff. That's pretty awesome. So, there's a certain quarterback that used to be in Boston that is always buying stuff. And I just think it's funny when you consider that he's one of the highest paid endorsed athletes for a competitive brand. Right.
No, and then they're wearing your stuff. I mean, that's awesome. And it's the quality I think makes all the difference. And not only that, but the customer service. I think it's such a small detail that can really be overlooked. But I mean, especially for me, I know like if I get poor customer service, it definitely leaves a poor taste in your mouth, and you're like, all right, I don't really, whether it's airlines or whether it's going, just going to the store, you're like, I don't really want to go back to that restaurant. And customer service at Rhone is, I would say, fantastic. I mean, I think it's.
I'm glad to hear that, because that matters a lot. It matters a lot. People remember that stuff, and at the end of the day, we have amazing customer experience people, and they're for the most part they're people working from home, and they have been since we started, and they're just awesome. So I haven't met like the vast majority of our customer experience team outside of video conferences. Yeah. But they're just awesome people, and they really care. Like they understand they represent the company, and we always say internally we're long-term relationship people. So if every interaction you think about it as a long-term relationship, it changes the way that you address someone, the way you treat them, the way you think about what's important to them. And most of the time when people are unkind to customer experience people, and it's like, all of us have been guilty of that at some point. I always say, like, it's not, you're not you when you don't have a Snickers. It's you're not you when you're talking to customer experience people. It's it's like holding the space for them, and holding the space for that customer, and understanding they must be going through something, or they must be having a hard day, or this has really impacted them, or maybe a shipment got delayed or lost and they were counting on that as a gift, and can you make space and really put yourself in their shoes? And so we definitely try and do all those things, and I do think it makes a difference. I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's a great customer experience. So the whole crew you get to video chat with, let them know they're doing a good job.
I will, for sure.
Now, as this has grown, right? You said it's about 6 years, but even longer, kind of going through and developing. I mean, just talk a little bit about the perseverance, because it's one of those things when you're trying to succeed and go forth in life that skiing wise, everything else. I mean, you have to have that perseverance athletically or in business, and times do get tough. Sometimes you get down on yourself, but to be able to persevere and continue to see it through. Because I mean, I know you were talking earlier that people are like, oh, it's just great, Rhone's so big now, and it's and people don't really see the day in, day out grind and work and kind of growth and building that really goes into it to see where it is today.
Yeah, I mean, perseverance is everything, because it's, there were times where I used to quote the dark nights of myself, which is like, that line where he says, it's always darkest just before the dawn.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if that's true. I think that's true, yeah. But like, that's just that was like a mantra that I would like say to myself is, okay, I know this is hard, but we're just around the corner. We're gonna reach this, we're gonna reach this. And it is scary. And sometimes you do have to put horse blinders on. I mean, if I told you the amount of people that I really respect and trusted who said, why are you doing this? You could go and you could get this great job and you can have this pension and, this, like, why are you doing this? It doesn't make sense. And this is so competitive, and you're going up against the biggest companies in the world with the biggest marketing budgets, and you stand no chance. And, you do have to put a little bit of those horse blinders on and say, I'm going to go towards this goal, and I'm not picking my head up until I get there. And yeah, I mean, you can do that to a fault, but for me, and I'm also like to give a huge amount of credit to the team that I work with. Like, we just had really great people who were saying, all right, let's just keep going. If this path didn't work, we're going to go around and, we'll try something else. And yeah, I took a lot of energy from the amazing people that I work with. But there were times where I was worried we weren't going to make payroll, and, early on in that history, and we weren't going to be able to raise the capital we needed. There were a lot of really, really scary moments.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's kind of that grind process, being able to, are the lights going to turn on? And a part of that success and growth, how important is it to have people around you that you can trust and can kind of maybe fill in some of your weaknesses, right? Where you're strong in some areas and you have that team that you talk about around you to be able to fill in some of those gaps and be able to kind of can keep the train rolling.
Yeah, that's it. It is absolutely everything. Like, you hear investors say it, but it's you almost hear it so much that it becomes cliche, where they say, I'd rather have a C idea with an A team than an A idea with a C team. Right. And like, I just think that's true. I mean, there are so many companies. We've had straight copycats. We've had people say, okay, we've heard this idea on a podcast. There's not very many men's active brands. It's a huge space. Like, we'll come. We've had people rip off marketing ideas and product ideas, and so many of those companies aren't around anymore. And I can't take the credit in terms of the difference, but our team can. And the people that I get to work with, and also, like, just, from a quality of life standpoint, you spend so much time with the people that you work with. You better at least like them. At a very minimum, you should at least like them.
Yeah.
But on top of that, it's great when they're talented because then you like them even more.
Right.
But it's like skiing, I guess, is much more of an individual sport, but you probably play team sports as well. Just
Yep.
knowing that your teammate's going to be there for you, whether they're going to show up or they're going to do what they say they're going to do, that matters a lot. And I certainly can't take the credit for that. We've just got great people on the team.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is one of the, playing football is such a team sport, and I played that, and even skiing, because it's interesting. It's an individual sport, but you have a team and you have people that you travel with, and at the end of the day, a lot of the times it is you against the hill. So
Sure.
those same teammates, like a Troy or a Ryan or you're
Yeah.
competing against them, but at the same time, it's really you against the hill. So you kind of cheer them on. It's definitely an interesting dynamic, but to be able to have those people there to help you when they know you're not having a good day, or they're not having a good day, definitely can make all the difference, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure they bring you energy in a very real way.
Absolutely. Now kind of speaking to the energy and your personality and enthusiasm, and where would you say who has kind of helped mentor you or kind of foster that throughout your career and kind of life?
Well, I mean, early on, it was my parents.
Parents, for
I
sure.
was blessed to have just amazing parents, and they instilled in me a sense of hard work and the importance of self responsibility. But like they both just live life to the absolute fullest. They're in London right now, serving as mission presidents for our church, and I'm talking to them and they're trying to solve every problem in the world. And I'm like, at what point do you guys just stop and just be like, we're going to be really great grandparents and like maybe go travel the world? No, they are just, they get less sleep than I do. They exercise. I remember going downstairs in our basement. We used to have this Stairmaster. You remember when that was an important part of cardio? And the floor would just be dripping with sweat, and my dad would just kill himself on this machine. And that's he's always been that way. He's a hard worker. He lives life to the fullest. They worked hard, they play hard, they just really live life and squeeze as much out of it as possible. And so they're a real inspiration for me. And then I've had amazing work mentors. At the NFL, I was fortunate to. I remember, my boss there, Renee Anderson, who was at the time she was the director of sponsorships, and she just became the chief revenue officer of the league. She's just an amazing person, great mentor, taught me a ton. I remember my grandfather saying, "Wait, your boss is a woman at the NFL?" And I was like, "Yeah, why is that weird?" And she taught me so much, and was a great inspiration. Then another executive at the NFL, a guy named Brian Rolap, who's an EVP there, was a great mentor for me.
Yeah, those are so kind of important throughout the career, and they really help kind of shape which direction you want to go. So it's always interesting to kind of get an idea of who's helped you along the way. Now, for people kind of starting out, whether they're going in and trying to build a company or something, I mean, what would be some advice or and a couple approaches other than template and kind of some of that goal setting? What advice would you have for them to stay the course and not be afraid to fail?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is very much that. Like, I think set yourself up to have good, productive days, because one of the hardest things in building a business is you're managing yourself, right? It's very easy when somebody says, "Hey, go and do A, B, C, and D." And it's a lot harder when you have to invent what A, B, C, and D is that need to be done, and then you have to go and do them on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think setting yourself up for productive days and having a system to keep yourself accountable. But the main thing is to really quickly get over the fear of failure. Because I remember another friend and mentor to me is a guy named Sean Nelson, who is the founder of a company called Lovesac, and they make really amazing furniture. They were known for their giant bean bags, and now they have these great couches called Sactionals, a play on sectionals, but they're the most unbelievable furniture. We have a ton of their furniture, and it holds up. But I remember Sean said to me, "Don't be afraid to wear your own t-shirt." And I was like, that's such a weird thing to say. What do you mean, don't be afraid? Like, of course I would wear our company. We're actually going to be making t-shirts.
Yeah.
But I realized what he meant is when you're getting started, you're almost hesitant to tell people what you're doing. And the reason why you're hesitant is because you want to be able to have that out when things go wrong, to say like, oh, well, there were all these things that went wrong, or I didn't end up telling all that people. But what he was saying is like, no, put on the shirt that says Rhone on the chest and go tell everybody what you're doing and be proud of it. And in order to do that, you have to get over the fact that, for me, it was no matter what I did or what I do. I remember people, I still get nasty comments from people saying, well, it's because your dad was successful. And it's like, you know what, you're right. I attribute 100% of my success to my parents. You couldn't give them enough credit. But I had to get to the point where I didn't care what anybody else thought. I only cared about holding myself accountable, and that I would be proud of that. So what I would say is, if you're thinking about starting something, get really loud and proud about it, and tell everybody, and tell your family, and shout about it, and get excited, and just keep charging. Just keep charging. And if you fail, at least you will have failed while daring greatly. So you won't be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory or defeat.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for taking the time. I really do appreciate it. And hopefully we'll get to chat again soon.
Total pleasure. Really appreciate it, Bobby. And thanks for the time.
Absolutely. All right. Bye, everybody.